Mr. Banasic, for your attendance today. We very much appreciate your submission.
My pleasure.
Very heartfelt and compelling, and also for you taking the time to give evidence. Before we begin, if you just state your name or any title that you may have, and swear either the oath or the affirmation.
Mr. Ben Banasic, I'm former Mayor of Wollondilly. I solemnly and sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Banasic. Do you have any opening comments that you would like to make? Just
a very brief one, yeah.
Thank you. Please
thank
proceed.
you. I live in Thelmere. It's the centre of Wollondilly. A number of you would know the area, representing it in a number of your different capacities through the last period of time where I've known a few of you. It's a population there that travels enormously for work. It doesn't have much public transport at all. Estimates is about 60 to 70% of the population travels outside of the area work. And what happens with that is that we have a lot of tradies in my area, and I also rely on travel for work, which means that the driving laws in New South Wales and the legal allowance of myself using cannabis is at odds, and I would like to know what the committee is going to do about that. I grew up in politics. I never intended to return to politics at all. I actually left to open up a business, but unfortunately I developed cancer. I know I made a submission and I know that there is images to it, but I understand that politicians are busy, they don't read everything. So on my chest, that's my normal side. This is the other side. So I developed a type of cancer in this section called DFSP. It's a type of cancer that's very, sort of looks like an octopus. It digs into your skin and your muscles. So I have no muscle tissue at all on that side of my chest. So despite walking around this building and looking normal at all times, I'm in chronic pain constantly, and I'm prescribed a number of different medicines for that. So I have a number of different options. I go to a pain specialist after I had my cancer removed, fortunately, and I will be on pain medicine for the remainder of my life. So I have a number of different choices. I can take antidepressants, I was told, but I'm not depressed. I can take medicinal cannabis, and it has no ongoing effects, or I can take opioids, or rip holes through my stomach lining, because I suffer from acute acid reflux, because the stomach lining and the top of my esophageal tract wasn't formed properly as a baby onto the stomach, so I have constant acid reflux. So I don't have much choice. If I would like to continue working in this place as I do for a parliamentarian, I will need to take my medicine, which is this medicinal cannabis. It's one of the types. I take 7 different types each day. When you see me all the time, I have taken cannabis within the last 24 hours. I know if I'm pulled over by the police today and they test my blood, it will be in my blood. It stays in there for up to 90 days. So I'd like to know from the members for the government and the opposition as to why myself as a medicinal cannabis user must be put on opioids. Why is it that your two major parties are in favour of opioids and antidepressants, but not in favour of medicinal cannabis? Or are you okay with me breaking the law of New South Wales and driving without those changes taking place? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Banasic. We'll now turn to questions from the opposition. Questions?
Well, thank you so much for coming to present your situation, and yeah, I'm obviously sorry that you experienced pain, and I'm glad that you found ways to manage it. And I think it is a really difficult issue because we just heard evidence that it's likely that the legalisation of cannabis does impact the road toll, for example. So I appreciate that that is extremely frustrating and difficult for you personally. And I think, I mean, I'm not sure if I really have any questions for you either, except to say that part of the work of this committee is to find ways to accommodate effective pain medication, for example, or use without having an impact on society, like a broader social impact in terms of safety on roads, for example. So I think there are ways that we will look at this in relation to employment as well, which is another aspect of this that's emerged as a problem, I guess, that needs to be addressed, or an area that needs to be addressed. And yeah, we'll do our best to work through those complicated issues. But really appreciate your sharing your story.
I can respond to some of the things that you've raised, Ms.
Please.
Monroe. In relation to the driving provisions, I agree with the last speaker who said that yes, it does lead to a rise. In New South Wales, there has been, or in Australia, there's been legalisation of medicinal cannabis. It has not led to any additional road tolls. What we're talking about here is two different things: medicinal use and recreational use. I'm not here advocating for recreational use and a driving provision and a scheme in that relation, but I think it is tantamountly unfair that if your federal and your state parties think that it's okay for me to be on opioids, which affects your driving as well. It has the same sticker on the opioids that you get, but I'm legally allowed to drive on opioids. I'm legally allowed to drive on antidepressants. I'm not legally allowed to drive on this, despite it having the same tantamount effect. Why is that? Why is the Australian medical laws different than the driving laws? In relation to the workplace laws, I know, and I was listening to the inquiry and the committee all day today. So there was Ms. Tracy Brown and Ms. Scott Barklam, I think, from the Australian Insurance Group earlier.
Industry group.
Australian Industry Group. Now, I'm a former employer. Actually, I had 17 staff underneath me, and one of the people I hired actually was on medicinal cannabis as well. You can't test for cannabis like that. What they've said here in relation to blood testing people who are in the workplaces is just not factual in relation to medical.
I think they were talking about swabs.
Yes, so swabs actually stays in your system as well. There is no proof that it can get out of your system straight away. So I may use cannabis a couple of hours ago and be fine compared to someone who does not. So it's about the amount of usage that you use and whether you're using it as a medicinal product. So in relation to a medicinal product, I would argue that it is exactly the same as an opioid, and therefore it should be up to the assessment of a doctor, not the assessment of a police officer, whether they dislike me for whatever reason and want me to get a blood test, whether I should lose my licence, because that's the end result here. That's the end result for every person that's on medicinal cannabis. I know that your party is represented by a number of people across the parliament, but that you have spokespeople for my area as well. Ms. McLaren-Jones, I know that you've spoken out for the Macarthur region a number of times. I've met with you out there when you were going for pre-selection a long, long time ago, and we were in different spaces. You know that Macarthur area really well. You know that there is no public transport there. And as the spokesperson for the opposition, I would hopefully that you are taking that up to the government and saying that these people out there, they don't have any choice. And statistically, they are on these products, whereas medicinally, you have opioids out there as well, which is the same treatment. These people don't deserve to be treated that way.
Thank you, Mr. Banasic. I'll jump in there. Can you tell us, a little bit about the process of getting medicinal cannabis? Are you advised by your doctor not to drive, or what advice are you given? And feel free not to answer it if you don't want to disclose anything.
So my doctor openly said that you should not be driving under the influence of it. That's the statement. And
so how is that managed?
That's managed by the patient or the doctor in discussing it. So how it worked, I was in a little bit of denial about this. So I got cancer, and I thought that after the cancer treatment and after I had half of my leg skin cut out and attached onto my chest, that I'd be all okay. So I was taking a number of different pain medicines, and I went to see this doctor, and he gave me a very low dose of CBD THC oil, so it's 1010 oil, and I was prescribed a couple of drops a day to test to see if it made a difference. The efficacy actually does. So I'm on a range of 7 different products. It's a different sativa and indica products, and the purpose of me taking those different products is to push down my usage all the time. So I'm prescribed about 5 times the amount that I actually take each day, because I take lower effects. So that's monitored constantly by my doctor. I'm constantly meeting with him. He's given me a number of different tests that I can do to make sure that I'm not taking too much. It's quite easy and it's quite manageable. It's medicinal. It's to the point where it's measured
But
as well.
does the doctor give you advice around like potential impairment?
Yes.
And says, for example, if you have this dose, don't drive for 4 hours, 5 hours.
Yes.
That happens with other medications.
Absolutely. Indica you do not drive on, to be simple about it.
And that's the advice from the doctor.
Absolutely. That's the advice from the doctor, and it's known as the type of cannabis that, is that couch surfing cannabis that you sit on the couch like. So that's the indica strain that most people would commonly, and those people that are watching this, I know that a lot of people don't know what the range of cannabis products are, like medicinal cannabis users are, but sativa is a daytime type of use. Indica is a more dominant strain which will send a patient to sleep. But in saying that, on a recreational front, I would agree with the panel members and agree with the last presenter that it does show a danger to driving. But for medicinal users, it's different. And statistically, the evidence has shown in the last 2 years there is no rise in driving accidents because doctors are being sensible about this and giving that advice. And that's the advice that I received as well.
Thank you. Have you faced any stigma? Have you, because of your cannabis use? Are you an advocate for cannabis use? And have you spoken publicly about your cannabis use as a former mayor? Have you received any prejudice, stigma?
A little bit. There's the assumption that you don't know what you're talking about if as soon as you say that you're on cannabis, that's the first thing, and that you're going to be on this trend of having the munchies constantly or whatever. But there's also the stigma of smoking and needing to do so. So I get wrapped up within that. And then the most recent laws in relation to vaporizers in Australia has meant that medicinal cannabis patients cannot purchase their vaporizers legally in this country anymore until they go to a pharmacist. Now, we were promised that, again, by the major parties, that it was vaporizers with an S, not Z with a Z, that was going to get banned, but all of them are banned. So now we have to go to chemists and we have to pay inflated prices for the vaporizers, or we have to combust the cannabis, leading to increased potentiality of lung diseases. That is not in the patient's interest. So the stigma in relation to it actually, I think, is more in line with the public policy, which is at odds with where the medical professionals are advising in the country.
And as a employee of the Parliament, do you ever consume your medicinal cannabis at Parliament?
Yes.
And is there a place for you to do that?
No. There's the smoking areas, but yep, that's it.
And in doing so, have you ever had anyone approach you and say, "What are you doing?"
No. I'm more subtle about it, so I go, either into the smoking areas or I, sit away from people. And it's medicinal, so it needs to be for 10 minutes. I need to not talk to anyone. I need to concentrate and get back to work. So that's how it's taken. It's not taken flippantly and just recreationally. It's not like the marijuana that you take as kids or recreationally. It's not much fun waking up at 7 o'clock in the morning in acute pain, like you've been kicked in the side, and having to take that. So that's the type of experience it is. Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Well, that's my questions done. Do you have any questions?
I just do have a question, and excuse me for my ignorance on this, and thank you very much for sharing your experience and being here. You did mention that you mentioned the two strains, I think, the day and the night, and you said that's very different to those taken for recreational. Is that because they've been prepared in a particular way, the dosage is delivered in a different way? Is that the reason you're saying that it's different?
No, it's actually different strains and different different types of genome of the plants. So
so it's not the same. I'm sorry, my mistake. I thought you said these are the same ones and they just have different.
They are. So they are treated in different ways. So there's been a manufacturing process through the plant horticulture, if you like. So they're breeding plants together to get more efficacy out of the plant, out of the THC or CBD dominant strains, and there are mixing of those two blends as well. So what I take is a lot of sativa through the day and indica at night. Typically what you'll find is people that are taking it for recreational use want to feel relaxed. So that's what they will say to someone that they're seeking it for, and automatically that person will then go to the more dominant strain which is in the marketplace, and the black market I know is dominated by the indica. So it's more of the brand, the strain which sends you to sleep or relaxes you that way. Whereas sativa, and my pain specialist spoke to me about this the first time I saw him. I passed an older guy as I was walking in, and he was just walking fine. Apparently the guy couldn't get up too much from the couch previously, takes sativa all the time, and now he feels like doing gardening. So it actually energizes you. It's almost like having a mixture of that, like almost a mixture of like a Panadol and a coffee.
Okay, so just to clarify, so it's not actually that the impact on is different. It's that people are using different strains for different things.
The impact on the person,
yes,
the output is different, as well.
Yes, of the different strains.
Yes,
but that's because people are using them for different purposes.
As
opposed to, for some reason, people who have had it medicinally have it this way. Or it's more that people are using it for different things.
But what happens, obviously, with medicinal use is that the body gets used to it. So the amounts that I would need of this compared to yourself would be very, very different.
Okay. And can I just ask you about the pharmacy issue? And again, forgive me, and I'm not meaning to seem flippant about it, and I understand there might be cost implications, which would be key, of course. Yes. But seeking medication or aids for medication from a pharmacy, that doesn't seem an outrageous thing to do.
No.
But you're suggesting, is your key objection to that that it's a cost thing, or is there some other objection to it being?
Put back to you. If would you think it would be fair to buy every measuring cup from a pharmacist because you can measure medicine with it? Because that's what's happened. Like the medicinal, like vaporizer, is not connected to this product. The vaporizer is a combustible thing which heats up cannabis to 240 degrees specifically and doesn't burn it.
So it would be, and again, I truly am, this is not my, so it would be the equivalent of, and I don't know this, can you buy sort of asthma inhalers from other, is that what we're talking about? It's to administer a drug? It's to administer
a actual product. It's available everywhere on the internet. You can import it everywhere. Right. I used to buy it from the US because that's where the companies are. None are made in Australia.
Right, okay.
And now I have to pay 4 times the value of what they're sold over the counter in Australia because the pharmacy guild's done a deal with the Labor Party and the Liberal Party.
Okay, so it's a cost implication.
Absolutely.
That's the key thing, just so that I understand, is a cost implication of selling it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All good.
Any other question?
I don't, but I think Mr. Cameron does.
Mr. Murphy, there he is.
Thank you, Chair. And look, I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you very much for sharing your personal experience and for coming along today to give evidence. One of the issues that's been raised in other evidence, but also touched on today in your evidence, is the practical difficulty in the workplace and on the roads in determining the difference between the mere presence of cannabis and impairment. And I just wondered if you could expand on that, and if you know of any practical measures that have been utilised anywhere else in the world that's been able to make that an easy determination. So you said earlier you talk to the doctor, people would follow the doctor's advice. I'm just thinking of this from the other perspective of law enforcement or employers in the workplace. Is there some other way to determine impairment simply, rather than just the presence in your system?
The only way to do it would be through a sobriety test, and I know that a number of American states have looked at that for their driving laws as they've legalised cannabis, because there is no way to measure whether there is that the individual is impaired more so than another. However, I would say that no person is tested whether they are impaired if they are on opioids or on antidepressants. No person is.
So you're highlighting that discrimination between...
Absolutely it is. because I can get both from the same doctor. It is the same pain specialist doctor. Just one is a cannabis and it's a class 4 drug, and that's the way it is. It's got a disparity of the treatment of how it is in New South Wales, and one is not. One is represented by Big Pharma and one is not.
Yeah, and look, as a second question, I just wondered whether you could provide us with some evidence about your experience accessing medicinal cannabis. We heard evidence earlier today about, for example, whether there should be cooperatives where people can grow it themselves, or changes to regulations to grow it at home, because of some of the difficulties for people in accessing that medicinal cannabis, because of both the cost and the practical impediments in doing so. So
Absolutely.
I just wondered what your experience was like and whether you could let us know.
It's very expensive. My wife would be very happy that you asked that question, because she said the first thing I should bring up is the cost in this panel. I said, no, it's a federal thing. Sorry, I'll have to go to a federal panel if I want to do that. She's not interested in me going there. So anyway, it's very expensive. I don't take the full dosage of what I need to, because I try and push down the amount that I need to. If I was going to pay the full rate and be on everything that I am prescribed, it would be in excess of about $2,500 per month. I'm currently paying over $900 per month. That's excluding if there's a vaporizer that needs to be replaced. Now I'll be looking at more fees because of the federal laws that have come in. So the restriction on it in that regard is very, very difficult. I still wouldn't go and plant plants. So even if those laws came in place in New South Wales, that wouldn't be for me. I'm not a grower in that regard. I'm not a farmer in that regard. I have a very small block. I have no interest in that. I'm an inside type person. But the costing that is for tantamount to what is a plant for individuals is very, very high. There is no coverage for patients by the federal government. It's not covered by anything, regardless of what you are prescribed it for. I have to pay the full rate. So it is very, very restrictive in that regard. I think that the model of having cooperatives and seeing it cheaper, and then if there is a legalised framework, having a higher tax, I would be very supportive of. As a patient, I would see that that would be fair, as patients wouldn't be taxed in that regard. But that's not my place to say. I'm here only speaking on the medicinal front.
Sure. And look, is one of the problems that you've got a very small number of large corporate entities that are effectively controlling that legalised market? Is that the issue?
No. There's a price fixing that's happening. So my doctor speaks often about it. So he has people that come from a number of different companies to present to him the different types. They're all ranging around the same price. So the price was initially based upon what the market, the black market was, which is roughly $25 or $20 per gram. And then it dropped from that when there was a lot of flood in the marketplace of different types of products. So the rarer products are not as cheap, and the products which are out there are more, and companies are competing with each other because it's a plant. We're actually finding a drop in those prices. So for some of the high-end oils that I need, those prices are not going down at all. And I would imagine that's what the marketplace will do if it is legalised in that front. So the reasoning for the actual high costing, I think, is this arrangement of these companies of having it in that level, and until there is an increase, there won't be a further decrease in price.
Okay, thank you for that.
Can I just clarify something that you said about, say, antidepressants and the use of cannabis?
Yep.
Are you saying that they have the same mind-altering impact on your state of mind,
Yes.
or impairment, or
Yes.
non-impairment?
For medicinal users, yes. Except
So there's there's no psychoactive ingredient.
There is no psychoactive, unfortunately. No, so it is what it is, and that's just so. However, on antidepressants, I can tell you I would not be able to do my job. I have taken antidepressants once in my life a long, long time ago. I did not like the person that I was for those couple of weeks that was. I was non-functional. And to take opioids as I did for those first few months of in my recovery, that's not the right thing to do to someone for the rest of their life. So yeah, absolutely, I would say that it's the same effect of the mind. So on the same measure, it should be there. And I think a sobriety test should take place for people on opioids too. If you have a sticker like that on your medication, whether it's an opioid or not, I'm sorry, it's the same effect.
Thank you.
It's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Banisic, for your submission, your attendance today,
My pleasure.
and your fearless and frank answers to the questions. We very much appreciate it. If there are any other questions, the Secretariat will be in contact to provide those to you on notice. But thank you very much again for your
Thank you.
attendance, your submission, etc., and have a great afternoon.
All right.
Thank
Good luck
you.
with the rest of it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
you.
much.
Thank you.
What have we got?